Hello, happy Thursday, happy summer. Thanks so much if you are joining me live. I so appreciate you taking the time. Just got off a fantastic call, which is why I'm a little bit later today. Sometimes you just have amazing conversations and you just have to finish it, right? So, anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit today about really being this quiet leader and how you can leverage being a quiet leader and stepping boldly into your power. And this was something that I didn't fully even understand about myself. I think even until after I started looking back on my career, even in a greater way, because sometimes we don't see ourselves in the same light as even others might see us, and so they might notice that maybe we're more quiet, more thoughtful, more introverted, but they might also see these other qualities. And I sometimes when I'm talking to different clients, the things that are coming up is like, how do I be like this type of a leader? Or how do I be more of a stereotypical leader? I don't think I quite fit in this role as a leader because a lot of my executive team operates very differently. And I spoke about this in my podcast on Tuesday a little bit if you haven't heard that, talking about, there's all of these amazing qualities that quiet leaders, introverted leaders, thoughtful leaders have and bring to the table in organizations, in teams, and really creating connections amongst people. And I think that this is really important to really bring to light because we need this in today's climate more than ever, right? Organizations have shifted, technology has shifted, innovation and the way that we think about moving forward in our lives is different, right? It's not quite the same as we think of in historical large corporations. And so it's time that we start thinking about leadership in a really different way. Now, I know I've spoke about, in the past, authentic leadership, developing authenticity. And I think this is very much in alignment with that. But sometimes we don't really understand what authenticity truly means. And we think that maybe it just means that we get to behave in any way that we want. And that's how the leadership style that we bring to the table is. What I want to say is it's really about leaning into those natural strengths and natural personality types that you bring and that you possess. And so I spoke about Principles U, which is it's based on the Big Five Personality Index. It's developed by Adam Grant and Ray Dalio. This is what I use with my clients to really understanding, what are our top archetypes? What are our personalities? What are those traits and facets that we bring to the table as leaders and as individuals and innovators so that we can understand, like, this is how I am naturally able to show up and contribute in a greater way. And the more that we can start to understand ourselves, the more that we're able to just allow for ourselves to come out and to shine and get to know other people. And so the amazing thing about being a quiet leader is that we are great connectors. We may not want to go and stand and orate all of the time. And I know a lot of quiet leaders who do speeches, speaking, presentations, Simon Sinek being one of them. But sometimes it's not in our natural repertoire, right? And so we have to work on it because we don't look at ourselves in that way. But as connectors, we have other ways that we can show up, even within our organization, where we're creating connections, we're developing rapport on a more intimate level. And because we're able to do this, because our communication style is maybe more in tune with having those one-on-one conversations, now our network that we're building is looking a little bit different. And so rather than relying on our charisma all the time, which we can have charisma, but maybe we're not relying on that and we're relying on this ability to create deeper meaning, deeper connections to further innovation, to further ideas, and to do it thoughtfully. There's this amazing piece about communication styles, whether we are a doer, a thinker, an influencer, a relator. And when you're a thinker, you are able to maybe look even 5, 10, 20 steps into the future about how something can be done, how something can be created, how it can be innovated. And sometimes when we're in the meeting room where we're thinking 10 steps ahead, I was having a conversation yesterday with a client about this. The other people in the room who might be more, on the loud or the boisterous side, or maybe they're just the action oriented types of doers who just want to get stuff done, they may not be thinking that far ahead. And so what you have is this really amazing ability to help bring them back, allowing their brain to get there, walk them forward, step it forward where you see projects, ideas, innovation, this larger vision coming to life. And I think that we discount this piece in ourselves sometimes as a leadership quality because, again, we're only looking at the fact like, well, I'm not this type of leader. I'm not a decisive leader. I'm indecisive. It takes me a while to think through problems. That's an incredible trait to have. It's incredible to be able to really project out that far into the different types of processes and procedures and strategies that might be enacted in order to really make whatever it is that you're creating truly successful. And I think that we can sometimes easily see too when something is going to become a train wreck and we're just kind of building the tracks as we're going down. If you've been in, project management, if you've been a part of innovation, I'm sure you can know what I'm talking about. So if you can, think about what are those pieces that you bring that are a natural fit for you, whether in a tech space, whether you're a software engineer, whether you're a designer, project manager, product manager, program. Thinking through, how do you bring connections back together? How do you thoughtfully help other people to see that larger vision and walk them forward so that they can see and understand this is what we're planning for. This is what we need to see so that we can innovate in the way that the organization, the company, the customer needs for us to start going towards. And there's a number of ways that we can start to do this. So if we don't feel comfortable speaking to large groups or speaking out in a certain way, it can feel unnatural. So think about for yourself, what are the natural ways that you can have some of these conversations? So yesterday I was telling, my client, I said, well, one of the things is that you can always just ask for clarification. Sometimes I think we think we're in a meeting that we have to know an answer to something, or we have to somehow report back something very specific and say, okay, this is the way that we're moving forward, or this is what we're going to do, or address something that's 5, 10 steps ahead, and they're not caught up with us yet. So rather than going to that far, to that point where maybe their brain shuts down or they go into overwhelm or they don't understand what you're talking about, just step back a little bit and ask for that clarification. So if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like this is what we've decided to move forward with. How do you imagine addressing then maybe this next step? Not 5 steps, this next step. Okay, great. Well, I'd love to follow up with you on that privately. Maybe it doesn't always warrant having that discussion largely in the meeting. So maybe you can follow up with people individually. And this can be an excellent networking strategy within your organization because now you're reaching out to people. You have a reason to be reaching out. You're looking for ways that you can be innovative and you're leading from behind. Quiet leaders have this amazing way that they can help to motivate their teams from an intrinsic level, essentially, because it's not so much about them, right? It's not so much about the ego as it is the getting it done, the product, the end result. And so when you're leading with integrity and accountability, it's the product that speaks for itself. It's the work that you're a part of that truly matters. And so then you have this ability to then empower the people that you're working with in a greater way, because it's less about you and more about everyone collectively working towards the right things, the same goals, the same types of initiatives, the same strategies. And so if you're thinking in those terms, then how can you lean into your analytical mind, your deliberative mind? How logical do you tend to think? And that's not to say that all quiet people are analytical. As a quiet person and a creative person, which I wrote about this morning, I tend to think a lot of wild ideas, but then I don't always, know how to proclamate out what it is that I'm thinking. And so that's where we can start to use those private, conversations, greater connections, to truly strategize whether even the ideas that we're thinking of are a good way forward before we even go and announce it to a larger group. Step back and think about, what is the power, what is the gift that you bring to the work that you do? What is it that you do so well that you feel incredibly proud of? Even if you're not looking at yourself in all of these other ways, what are the things that you feel incredibly proud of? Because those are the things that make you and have the propensity to becoming a fantastic leader and thought leader and innovator, and have the ability to lead large teams. A lot of the clients that I have who are leading large teams, 500 people, 1,000 people, they're not all the loudest people in the room, but they know how to connect with people to get work accomplished, to help everyone move in the right direction. Because if we don't have that type of leadership, then we're all moving in different ways. That's not beneficial for anyone. So how do you leverage those unique talents and gifts that you bring and your personality, and think strategically and think creatively about how you can then become even greater leader? You might be leading a large team already, but sometimes you feel like you're just not fitting in. You're not fitting the mold. And so then it's about what strategies can you put into place. I often recommend Miro to my clients because it's a wonderful way, especially when we're dealing with remote teams, especially when we're dealing with different types of personalities. Again, on our teams, we don't all have the same personalities. Not everybody wants to be speaking out loud. Some people are really quiet. Use different tools to enable them to have a voice. Use different strategies and techniques, coaching modalities, to enable your team to start feeling safer with one another. And when you use certain things like that, that enables you as a quiet leader to facilitate in a bigger way. So really think about, what are those strategies? What are those ways that you can start connecting as a leader with different people in your organization? How can you create a networking strategy that works for you? You might not feel comfortable in certain settings, so find reasons to have conversations. Find reasons where you can be more service or servant based in your approach, as opposed to, maybe a personal gains type of approach. Sometimes I think we're like, well, I don't want to reach out because I don't want to seem like I'm only benefiting here and I don't want to waste people's time. Well, if you're asking how you can improve something, how your team can improve something, and you're wanting to genuinely get to know them, are you wasting their time, or are you finding ways that you can innovate? And are you at the same time creating a connection? And are you at the same time learning about their role? So come at the way that you approach this with curiosity, with integrity, with how you genuinely show up in the world. And I think it's important that, leadership is really just how we help people, how we help organizations, how we help teams accomplish greater things that we couldn't accomplish individually on our own. That's leadership. It doesn't mean that we have to have all the answers. It doesn't mean that we are supposed to be a certain way. There's always room for improvement. There's always refinement that we can be doing and thinking about differently, so that we're cultivating conversations that have meaning, so that we're helping individuals on our team, move forward, move past fears, move past self-doubt, strategize and think of new ways of implementing solutions. And you can do that through your one-on-ones as well as group meetings. But really thinking about, who are you as a leader? What gives you meaning and purpose as a leader? For me, it was my team. Once I started moving into leadership, my idea of who I was shifted. And at first I was terrified. I was like, I don't know. I don't think of myself as this. I don't know why I'm being invited to some of these conversations. I don't know how I'm going to contribute. And I had to find my own way of participating that felt natural to me. But then I was also able to start shifting. It's not about me. It's not about my individual contribution. It's not even about me proving myself. It's about me facilitating a way for my team to operate efficiently and effectively, and to move ideas forward, and to help the operation be smooth, so that the outcome was what we had hoped, right? What we intended. And of course, that's not always the case, right? We always have things that come up, setbacks and challenges and unexpected issues and problems. But how are we facilitating in a greater way? And the more that you become comfortable in that, the easier it starts to become to do their other things that leadership requires: strategic conversations, conflict management, negotiation, making tough decisions. But we have to start by leaning into, who are we? Because if we're pretending to be someone else that we are not, if we're trying to fit into some fictitious mold, that's our ego. That's us trying to be something else. And then we're not focusing on the things that we need to be focusing on in order to grow our team. So we need to become so steadfast, so dedicated, so observant of our teams, so that we can become the leader that we want to be. Quote unquote quiet leadership means that you're passionate. It means that you're audacious. It means that you're bold. It means that you are feisty. It means that you care. And a lot of the quiet leaders I know are some of the most caring and caring about the work that they do, that finished product, and they hold themselves to such high standard that it's hard for them to step back. So think about how you can step back and empower your team so that they can start to move forward. Because it's not about all the ideas that just live within your mind. It's about how you take those ideas and then you help for them to discover it themselves. So if you can think about how you leverage your ability to develop rapport, communicate, cultivate relationships, that's an excellent way to start moving your team and moving your leadership in the direction that you're hoping to take it. It means that when you walk into executive meetings, you don't feel like you have to know all the answers, as long as you're curious and you're there to learn and you can ask the right questions to move us in the direction that we need to go. Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about how we tap into the right people to find the answers, to find different types of solutions, and to challenge our thinking so that we can be competitive, so that we can be innovative. That's what our organization needs from us so that we can move forward. Why do I feel like it's important to talk about this? Because so many quiet leaders don't step up to the plate because they don't see themselves as the leader that they feel like they're supposed to be. And yet they're the leader that we need the most. So create avenues of visibility for yourself rather than just staying silent. Because quiet doesn't mean that you're a pushover. It doesn't mean that you don't have ideas. It doesn't mean that you don't care or you're not passionate. And those are all judgments and assumptions that sometimes get made that are not true. So find ways that you can then naturally create visibility so that you can be the leader that your organization needs, that your team needs, your colleagues need. Get your ideas out there in a different type of way. Maybe it is non-traditional. What does that look like for you? What are some ways that you can go about doing that? I didn't feel comfortable sharing all of my ideas loudly. I wrote them down. I had my little book of ideas, and I would then share them with key people in the organization. How could this help the organization? How could this help the organization? How could this move us forward? And I did it with people who I knew cared about how that idea could potentially be seen and heard and innovated on. And so it wasn't always just within my managers, because that I wasn't always on their purview. So sometimes it was CTO, COO, when I was no title at all. So how can you create change? How do you influence change? How do you influence teams? If you're a quiet leader, if you're introverted, you start making those connections. You start finding ways that you are able to reach out and share your ideas where it feels safe. You start building that muscle where it starts to feel more natural and starts to come to you in a different way, where eventually you start noticing, wow, I actually am being more bold. I am speaking up more. I am able to do all of this. Sometimes we just don't allow for ourselves the opportunity. We don't give ourselves a chance. None of us walk in knowing how we're supposed to be in any role. We are learning as we're going. We're developing, we're growing, we're refining ourselves, we're evolving. So how are you continuing to evolve? Knowing this might be your personality. Yes, but it also doesn't mean that you get to just stay in a corner. So how can you find that way for yourself? How do you figure out a way forward and think through it differently, boldly, audaciously, and still be true to yourself? I'd love to know your thoughts. Thanks so much for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time. Please reach out in the comments or direct message me, and I'd love to chat with you more about how you show up as a quiet leader in your organization.